Got it.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining us on today's Forward Janesville Critical Topic webinar. My name is Dan Cunningham, Vice President of Government Relations and Education. Good to see everybody today. We're, of course, recording this. We'll be sending this out to our members after the fact. So a lot of people are going to have a chance to view this session here today on, frankly, on public safety and positive community impact. And we're thrilled to have our top law enforcement partners on board today for the call. So before we get into it, wanted to let you know that today's call is presented by BMO Harris Bank. BMO Harris Bank has dedicated bankers in the local market who understand your business, industry, and market and offer solutions tailored to your unique needs. They have deep roots in the community with a long history of supporting Forward Janesville and other nonprofit organizations. So thanks to BMO Harris for their support of this organization and, frankly, of the community. So, little housekeeping matters. Wanted to remind you that you can submit a question for our panel today by direct messaging it to me, Dan Cunningham, in the chat function. I see Angela Pakes, our president and CEO, is on as well. I'm going to turn it over to her in just a second here for some remarks as well. So, as you know from the invitation, this webinar really is going to focus on the important services provided by our public safety partners and how they make our community a great place to live, work, and play. Want them to talk about some initiatives going on within their respective departments and, frankly, the role that strong public safety plays in economic development and really for the betterment of our entire community. So I don't feel bad if I mute you. I just want to make sure that our panelists have the floor exclusively. But you can unmute yourself and ask a question later, or do it in the chat function. So, with that, Angela, I wanted to throw it over to you. I know you had some messages you'd like to share.
Yeah, well, thanks so much, Dan. And thank you, first of all, Sheriff Knutson and Chief Moore for being with us today. We're really excited to have this Critical Topics webinar on our great forces that keep and serve everybody safe in our community. And one of the great things about Rock County and Janesville is our low crime rates and different ways that our police and armed forces are really keeping us a safe community and a desired community to raise families. One of the things that we get asked a lot is from recruiters and people that are looking to recruit more people to come to Rock County for jobs and educational experiences. And it's really wonderful to be able to point to the data from both Rock County Sheriff's Department and the City of Janesville Police Departments as being really top. And so low numbers are great in these respects, where we can say that, these types of things are very low in our community, and where low numbers matter. We don't really share this information enough. So we thought that today's webinar would be really great to share with our community members and really businesses that are looking to recruit others. So the recording is going to be shared, broadly as people ask us about what's it like living in Janesville. What kind of things does the Rock County Sheriff's Department, what kind of things do the police officers in our community do to serve us, and how does that look? And I know I'll leave the details to both of you, Chief Moore and Sheriff Knutson, to share with us today. And just one more special shout out before we get started. Chief Moore, we are all super grateful for you stepping in as interim city manager. You're going to be carrying a lot of water and have a lot of responsibility in the couple months ahead. We're just really thrilled to have you join us in this interim role and moving our city forward. And you obviously have a good grasp on the community as a whole. So I really, I don't think the city council could have made a better selection for somebody who's just so outstanding in our community to guide us forward as we go forward and find a city manager to add to Janesville. So thank you for stepping up and leaning in when asked to do something like this so huge for our community.
Thanks, Angela.
Yep. All right, Dan, we'll take it over to you. Let you have it.
Sure. Thanks, Angela, and thanks for being on. And again, as she mentioned, that we'll be sharing this out with lots and lots of people. So thanks for being on. So did want to highlight one thing before we go over to our participants. Our Janesville Community Dashboard is something that it's a resource that I hope people are using. We do have some of our great, frankly, crime statistic numbers on that dashboard. So visit forwardjanesville.com, It's right on the front page, our community dashboard. Click that, then you can see that data, and then click through to view even more data. So we do encourage people to take a look at that. So with that, I want to start off by giving each of our panelists some time to talk about goings on in their respective departments, and then we'll have questions for both of the panelists. So without further ado, Chief Moore, why don't we start with you, and then we'll go over to Sheriff Knutson, and then we'll do some questions and answers. So Chief Moore, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Dan. Yes, we're very busy here, and rightfully so. And it seems that my role has changed a little bit in the last 24 hours, and I look very forward to working with everyone in the community, and in particular Forward Janesville. And it'll be interesting to blend some of those city manager responsibilities and public safety responsibilities, because I think there's some good opportunity there. But Dan, I got to tell you, I've read your questions. You're spot on where I want to go with our message. So I'll save some time here and spend a little more time on your very good questions.
Super. No problem at all. No problem at all. Sheriff Knutson, you want to give any opening remarks, or should we just get right into the questions?
Well, I got just a couple of opening remarks here. First of all, just should mention I've got Kurt Fell with me. I asked him to sit in kind of as a resource for me in case any real specific detail type questions come up with the Pinehurst replacement project that we've got going on right now. Certainly I can speak to the philosophy and generally where we have been and where we hope to go with that project. But, you know, if any of the questions came in that were too detailed, you know, the moisture content of the concrete or something, I think he'd be the guy to ask, because that gets a little too detailed for me, and he's been a big part of that planning project to get us to where we're at, and now providing that oversight of the construction process. So I just wanted to give him credit for being here and backing me up on that. Certainly we're going to talk more about that replacement project here in just a few moments and those questions. So we'll kind of breeze past that one at the moment. Another really exciting thing that we've got going on here at the sheriff's office in the next month is going to be an election. It's kind of a changing of the guard, a wrapping up of the projects of one sheriff and his initiatives, and turning it over to a new one here very, very shortly. So, you know, looking back at the time that I've been here, there's a few things that we've been working on that I think are worth highlighting. You know, if people have questions as to, you know, what's going on out at the sheriff's office or what are they working on, I think there's a few things that are worth highlighting there. You know, one of our initiatives this year was to get ourselves a treatment coordinator for the jail, to provide some programming for the inmates who are in our custody down there. We hired Veronice Sandoval, and she really has hit the ground running. I stopped down to one of her classes last week and getting good participation from some of our inmates down there, both in terms of some writing assignments, some classes that she's putting on, also coordinating getting our chaplains and AA people back in here after the pandemic. So I think we're headed in the right direction there. We also were able to hire Kendra Bechtal, which is going to be a second mental health expert here to back up Courtney Stewart, who's been in that capacity for the last few years. Courtney started out dealing with some of our mental health concerns in the jail in a part-time basis when I started a couple of years back, and she went to full-time status, and now we've added a second person to back her up. And I think that's going to help us to deal with the issues that we have, but that continues to be kind of a big issue for the jail. You know, we don't have our old mental health treatment facility here in Rock County. We have to send everybody up to Winnebago, with the exception of a few that go to Mendota, and it's good to have a little bit of extra expertise to help with those people who end up in our facility down here. We hired Krista Truan, who would be a second full-time reentry person for our program there when our inmates are getting released from custody. Her and Amy Evans work on connecting up those inmates to supports that exist in our community, sober living environments, medications if they've got needs that way. They can also help point them towards jobs in the community and people who are able to help connect workers to work and help those inmates have the best possible chance of landing on their feet and not returning to our facility. Should probably also mention that we've started taking some Dane County inmates. They have an overflow situation up there. And so we have taken on a few to alleviate some of their strain that way. And that's also providing some income for Rock County. We're now up to 6 correctional supervisors. When I started, we had 1. And that was a shift that we made to bring in a little more jail experience at a slightly improved price over the sergeants that used to be in that position. And it gives a career path for our correctional officers. And I think that's kind of important. Part of, the transfer of one administration to another is making sure you turn over the place in a decent condition. So we've got a jail cleaning and a painting project going on. A couple other things just briefly to touch on that I will probably talk about a little bit more here in some of those questions. Our push to get body cameras a year or 2 ago it's been implemented. Our digital evidence program is up and running to support that program, and we're just very pleased with that. Policies are now updated to accreditation standards. We hired a crime analyst who is able to support our investigators, leverage a little technology to address some of the trends in our community as efficiently as we can. I don't know, there's just so many of these things that we could talk about out here, and I think they're all kind of important for where we've been and where we're going to. We talked about some of the homeless issues in our community, and we came up with a voucher program to help deal with those who are temporarily homeless in our community. And we've had a few emergencies. We've had the presidential visit. We have logged a ton of time helping other agencies during the civil unrest in the past couple of years, and we did it all kind of in the midst of that pandemic. So I'm just very pleased with where things have come from and where they're headed to, and I can't say enough about the staff who have really made all of these things happen. So I guess if you're looking for a couple of minutes of where things at here out at the sheriff's office, that's kind of where we're at this point.
Good deal. Well, thank you so much, Sheriff Knutson. Sounds like some great things going on, and to look forward to chatting more about them. So I wanted to get into a couple of questions. I got some specific questions for each of you, and then some questions for both of you. But before I do so, I want to, this next question is going to be for Chief Moore, but I wanted to share my screen real quick and show you guys some of the data that's on our community dashboard. So you see here the total number of Part 1 crimes in Janesville has been reduced by 14% over 2020. And importantly, the community perception of the Janesville Police Department is 76% positive. And if you go in and click View Data here, it'll take you into a little bit more of some trend lines here. And you see the number of Part 1 index crimes in Janesville. I mean, look at this trend line here. I mean, significantly and really just dropping over time. So again, that's on our website, forwardjanesville.com. So Chief Moore, over the past 10 years, I mean, crime rates in Janesville have really been cut in half. Not only has the past decade seen a sharp decline in overall crime, but 2021 saw the lowest totals in 40 years or so. I mean, in your opinion, what factors have really led us to this point?
So it's my responsibility to report those crime numbers. But it's really an entire community that drives crime down. It takes schools, parenting, churches, YMCA, YWCA, community services such as drug and alcohol services. These all push the crime rate down, and certainly the police department plays a part in it, but it really takes an entire community to drive those rates down. Speaking for the police department, we take a hard look at what is going on in our community. We look at the region and we look at the nation, and we try and build initiatives to address crime that is either here or maybe coming our way. And some of those initiatives are domestic violence. We have a domestic violence intervention team. Although we have few homicides, about 1.5 a year, about 2/3 of those are domestic violence related, so we know that we need to do some work there. We have relatively few crimes with gun violence, so that allows us to put a lot of resources into those crimes when they do occur. We have a street crimes unit that is very, very effective. Have 7 undercover officers out there most every day. And we know they're effective because we listen to the jail phones, and the jail phones tell their other buddies, don't come to Janesville, don't bring your guns to Janesville, don't bring your drugs to Janesville. And we think that that is just a very important message from the bad guys telling other bad guys. We have a high risk offender team. As you know, there's just a relatively few people in our community that cause crimes. And we focus on those individuals that we know are out there causing crime and work towards making sure they don't commit more crime. And I can tell you, our old world policing was we'd saturate neighborhoods with policing, and it was effective, but we'd end up encountering a lot of people that really weren't criminals. They happened to have a tail light out, headlight out, and they ended up getting stopped, and probably not the greatest connection we wanted to make with our community. And we've changed that up, and we're much more strategic as to who those people are in our community that are committing crimes, and we focus those efforts towards drug houses and those people that we know that are committing crimes. And that's, I think, a more just way to offer law enforcement and more effective. A few other things that we're doing, we're very keyed in on kids, drug endangered children, domestic violence, witnessing domestic violence, handle with care. We bring the schools in and let them know on what kids are kind of struggling a little bit, because the science shows us if we do a good job with these kids, they're less prone to get involved in the criminal justice system 10 years out. We have a very good crisis intervention team where we're constantly trying to build relationships with those in our community that suffer from behavioral health issues. And we know the science behind that is that those encounters can go bad. It ends up with use of force, and we think it's far more wise to build a relationship on the front end, learn what works for these folks that have a behavioral health issue, and be really more of a help than harm when their moment of stress comes along. We built a couple years ago here, we built a 9-point gun crime plan, and the officers have taken that in, and we seem to be driving down our gun crime in our community. And lastly, I'll share that we have good working relationships with other law enforcement. Sheriff Knutson and his team, they're just great. Sometimes we get stressed. Sometimes we don't have enough officers to go around, and they'll come in and take some calls for service for us. Sheriff, the other day, one of your troops was helping us out a lot, so we had him in. We gave him a challenge coin, and I gave him a JPD patch with Velcro on it so he could put it on his shoulder because he was helping us so much. So he seemed to get a kick out of that. But collectively, we just look at what are those challenges in our community, and we just make sure that we're putting initiatives in place to address it.
Chief, I'm glad you mentioned that collaboration. I know there's a lot of collaboration between your agencies, and I think that matters so much, and really the whole community policing picture. So thank you for your work there. And Chief, I've got to say, part of the reason that we wanted to have this call is because I got my hands on the police department annual report, and I dug in and just geeked out and found it to be so interesting. I mean, you got your police activity levels, staffing levels, numbers for specific crimes, expenditures, things like that. I just, as a government nerd, I found that to be extremely interesting, and not to say that it's not accessible to the public, because it's really easy to read and just a really interesting report that you guys put out. Is that stuff available to the public anywhere? Can we find that on the city's website?
Yeah, certainly. Just go to the police department's website, and there's an icon there, and you can read the entire report.
Yeah, I would encourage people to go dig into those numbers, because, I mean, you can throw a few statistics out there and it tells part of the story, but really it's very in-depth, and I want to dig into it a little bit in a future question, maybe talk a little bit about where some hot spots are in terms of crimes and things that the community ought to be aware of and looking out for as we continue to be proactive in our police efforts. But before I did that, Sheriff Knutson, wanted to throw it over to you real quick to give us a rundown of the of the jail and law enforcement services project, and tell us about the project as much as you can, and kind of how you think it'll benefit the community. I've seen a lot of work happening out there. There's quite a big berm happening over on Highway 51 there. So tell us more, and if you want to bring Kurt in to this discussion, you certainly can as well.
Oh, absolutely. And before I jump on my soapbox with regards to the building project there, I appreciate the chief, mentioning that relationship and our guys helping out his guys, and we appreciate it, being reciprocated the other way. Myself, as a relatively new sheriff a couple of years ago, I reached out to the chief and asked to job shadow him. I have certainly reached out to him on occasion for a little direction as a leader of an organization, and he's always been there for me, and I appreciate his experience and his willingness to always help out where he can. As far as the Pinehurst replacement project, this was this has been a long time in coming. I think back in 2005, 2006, as a lieutenant, I was assigned full-time to planning the replacement of Pinehurst, and it kind of got put on the back burner for a while in my career, but it's been something we've been talking about quite a bit, and it's certainly near and dear to my heart. So once I get talking on this, it could go for the afternoon. So feel free to send out the hook and slow me down just a little bit here. I'm very tempted to jump right into the weeds and talk about the fine points of the plan here. But I was talking to somebody on Sunday, and I was surprised, as well as I understand the project, for them, they really don't have too much contact out here, and, didn't really know where we were going, even in the grand scheme of things. And I was thinking, for the leaders that are part of Forward Janesville, if people are coming and asking them questions, I hope that they understand the big picture, and I guess that's what I'll start with, and we can make it finer if we need to. But as a person drives past the sheriff's office on Highway 14, you look over at the sheriff's office and you see the two big towers in the front, and they look professional and beautiful, and they were built in 1987. And the question is, what happens to those? And we are absolutely definitely keeping them. And that is a testament to the people who build them. That's a testament to Joe Black, whose site and whose work went into that to build them the way they did. There's another sheriff north of us who's already replacing a jail that was built in 1987 up in his jurisdiction. So ours, it seems like it's weathering time very well, and it still continues to serve us very well, and we're going to hold on to that. Since then, we had an addition in 2011, which is kind of added on to the east of those towers, and we are absolutely, without question, keeping that part also, and that gets incorporated into the master plan for this facility. The part that's going to be replaced is to the right of those towers, and it extends to the south, and it's harder to see from the highway there, but it was built in 1929, and that was a tuberculosis sanitarium back when it was originally built. And the concept there was long, narrow rooms, lots of ventilation, big windows, so that the bad germs and stuff could blow through the room and out the other side and not cross-contaminate somebody else. I think they did a nice job back when they repurposed this to work for corrections, but the basic concept was weak, because with those long, narrow rooms, it makes it very hard to see through all of the inmates that are housed in those rooms to the back ends where things can happen. Once we went to recap, we ended up doing some training in the back of those rooms. So the poor correctional officer who's trying to maintain safety and security has to look through maybe 40 inmates in a long, narrow room and look into a room that has a door on it that closes, that has no surveillance inside to the actual computer lab. So just the basic design was not good. People have said, in this day and age, how would you not have surveillance? Well, putting in surveillance into a 1929 building and having it be correctional grade is vastly different than putting it into an office building. If the inmates can get to those wires, bad things are going to happen. So it gets very expensive to add items like that. We've been fortunate thus far, but it's time to move on. We also didn't want to send any good money after bad with that old building. Some of the mechanicals were in need of being replaced to the tune of $5 or $10 million. To put that into an old building where some of the walls are deteriorating and we're having water incursion problems for literally decades, just didn't seem like a good plan. So basically that 1929 portion of our facility is what's going to be replaced. We basically have two parts in that facility. One is law enforcement services, which is basically like our version of a police department. And the other part that Pinehurst makes up is housing for approximately 200 of our lower security inmates. The project to replace this comes from General Services down at the courthouse, part of the master plan that the county board envisioned as far as maintaining our facilities and making sure that we don't get hit with construction on all of them at one time. And it was determined that this one was the next in line to be replaced. So this spring, they approved a $96 million project. The footings have already been started here. I look out my window today and I see them working on beginning to put some of the walls in place. So it's really pretty amazing to see. I haven't been involved in a lot of actually seeing the construction, and the way they are going to work here is just impressive to me. What we're hoping to accomplish on that law enforcement side, or the what you might think of as a police department, is we're really hoping to bring back training and emergency management so that it's more integrated and works better together. We're really making a push for better communication and technology to be incorporated into that to help us coordinate investigations and respond to serious situations. On the corrections side of the facility, some of what we're hoping to accomplish there, we have basically two parts that are going to comprise the replacement of that housing for 200 inmates. One of those is going to be a special needs facility where it's going to have a variety of direct and indirect housing, where the inmates can walk right up to the officer, or they have to talk to them through glass, depending on their security level, depending on their classification level. Also have bigger rooms so that other inmates can help monitor some that are problematic, and then smaller rooms for those who can't be around as many people. We talked a little bit about mental health concerns in corrections, and it can cause a variety of different issues for us. And by being able to split it up and have different housing areas, I think we're going to be better able to be flexible and address individual needs better than we can right now. The other part that we're going to be building is really a large dormitory of where we're hoping to have lower security inmates. What we envision is from that 1987, that's very high security, and it's not the friendliest environment for inmates. And we envision getting all the way down to the dormitory area. It'll be for lower classification, lower security inmates, and hopefully it will have better areas for programming, for treatment, and just a slightly better environment for them so that they have an incentive to try and provide good behavior to move from the more secure area down to the more minimum secure area. So that's kind of the large scheme of what we're hoping to accomplish with this project. It's probably looking to be at least 2 years, if not 3, or maybe even a little bit more before it actually becomes completely functional. We're going to put into place the law enforcement services side, the jail side, and they're going to move the inmates, move the officers, and then the old Pinehurst facility will be coming down as this project, as the other areas are able to be opened. So all in all, without doubt that Pinehurst had to be replaced, I think it just based on its general condition. But I do have to give a little bit of a shout out to our maintenance, our general services people who kept that place up and running for as long as they did. Some of that construction you don't even hardly see anymore. Some of those floors are just amazing. They ought to be in a museum somewhere for the way they have weathered nearly 100 years worth of use. They still look really good, but some of the walls and some of the areas where water has been a problem for us are really starting to show their age. So I appreciate the opportunity to jump up on that soapbox, and if you got any questions, by all means, I'm open to it.
Good deal. Thank you, Sheriff. It's a really important project, and we wanted to give you some time to talk about it because you're right. I think that people see the progress out there and maybe aren't quite sure exactly what's happening. So that context and information is very important. So we got about 15 minutes left on the call here, so I want to jump into a couple questions real quick here. You know, the important services provided by our public safety partners really make our community a great place to live, work, and play. I'd like to get both of your thoughts, frankly, on how these public safety and policing services impact our ability to frankly attract new companies and jobs to the area. So your role in economic development. So, Chief Moore, you wanna lead that one off?
Certainly. And I'm glad you brought this question up. And I want to take you back to 2009. We had just lost our GM plant. Things were pretty dark around Janesville, big cloud over us. We were starting to lose a couple of neighborhoods by landlords that would just rent to anybody. And we were concerned about losing those neighborhoods to crime and disorder. So we sat down and I challenged our staff and I says, look, Janesville's a good place. We've got good schools, good government, good housing, parks are beautiful. And if we keep this community safe, people will come. And I said, make no mistake, officers, you are part of economic development because if we keep it safe, people will come. And we want to all about some training with problem-oriented policing. We were very targeted. Well, I hate to use that term. We're very precise in where we wanted to put our resources, put a lot of resources in Look West and Fourth Ward. Some people say, well, why? Well, our entire community would be judged on how we did in those neighborhoods. And we incrementally worked on that over the years. And look where we are today. We have more jobs than we have people, and we have more people than we have housing. So you're right on the mark. Law enforcement and safety and security and crime rates, they are directly related to economic development and bringing people to our community. In the next month, you're going to see a survey, a public perception of crime and safety conducted by UW-Whitewater is going to be released. And I was pleasantly surprised because I thought in this post-Minneapolis world, those numbers would go down. We try to do them about every 5 years. But I have to tell you that safety in Janesville is higher, perceived to be higher, and it is higher than it's ever been before, at least based on these three scientific surveys. So we'll be rolling that out in the next month. And I hope that all of your members share with businesses that want to come here, people that want to come here, that crime rate and that relative safety. And we've got the documents to prove it. And I will share that UW-Whitewater survey with you, and hopefully you can have that as a part of your Forward Janesville board there as well.
Yeah, that would be great, Chief, and thank you for that. And so, Sheriff Knutson, you want to comment on the role that your services play in economic development?
You know, I think I would echo the chief's comments there about crime trends heading in the right direction. You know, we're seeing some similar trends out in the rural areas that we have primary jurisdiction for. So I think that's certainly something that I would tout to a business looking to move into this area. But I think anecdotally, you know, when you look at some of the issues that have occurred, mentioned a little bit about Minneapolis there, you know, I think other communities have certainly had some serious difficulties in dealing with the aftermath of that. And I think we've been very fortunate here in Rock County to have been spared some of that. And I think that's due at least in part to some of the relationships that were established before that situation developed. And you know, I've been pleased with the way things went. You know, for our teams, we were able to go to Madison and Kenosha and Milwaukee and help them with some of their issues, and very few times where we called upon to send our mobile field force anywhere locally to deal with problems here. So, you know, I think that's, you know, a further evidence of, you know, proper place here for businesses and for people, just to, you know, reinforce that things seem to be going well this way.
Good deal. So I mentioned it earlier, and we've actually had a question come in about it. While many of the community's crime numbers, as we've talked about, are heading in the right direction, frankly, and decreasing, are there crimes that we should be aware of that are on the rise? What are the hot spots out there that you're seeing? We'll start this one with Chief Moore as well.
Yeah, we've got a problem with the Kia vehicles. They're easily broken into. The steering column is easily defeated. And we have people that come to our community in the middle of the night, they break out the back window and steal a car. So we've got more stolen cars this year than I think than we've ever seen. I think that's what the numbers are gonna prove out. And it's a tough one for us to proactively get after, because it's such a quick theft, and they're out of town folks, and they tend to either joyride or go and do other crimes with them. So that's something we're looking at working. Certainly the fentanyl circumstance is of concern to us. And while I suppose somebody could say, well, that's really not a crime, and that, it's unfortunate people overdose and people die, and we're losing like 9 to 10 people a year to fentanyl overdoses compared to maybe 1 to 2 homicides. And I can tell you that if I had 9 to 10 homicides in this community, I probably wouldn't be on this screen with you here today, because people wouldn't be very happy. But to that end, those folks that are addicted to fentanyl do a lot of crime, a lot of shoplifting, and that's another area that we continue to work on. I know too, you asked in one question here about hotspots. Where are some hotspots in the community? And as I looked at that, we really don't have any. We have some individual homes that we focus on, but as far as a neighborhood or a series of blocks, no, there's really not any hotspots. And that UW survey really proved that out, because everybody in their own neighborhood said, hey, I feel safe. Now, a few of them in their own neighborhood says, I don't feel safe in somebody else's neighborhood, but everybody in their own neighborhood says that they feel safe. So no, doing well with the hotspots, but drug crimes, stolen vehicles, those are our area of focus right now.
How about you, Sheriff? You got hotspots you're looking at these days?
I would certainly, again, echo the chief's comments. Those types of crimes, those types of issues are certainly concerns for us as well. As I look forward as to, what are problems in the future that I envision that we're going to have to deal with, these computer crimes are getting to be more and more problematic. You think of identity theft and credit card crime and internet crimes against kids and the dark web, and how they try and hide money with the digital currency. All of that sort of stuff are concerns, and those types of investigations are expensive, and they require additional expertise, additional equipment compared to what we are used to dealing with. Things that are hitting too close to home, getting to be very problematic here locally. One of the words, it's going to become a buzzword here soon, is going to be sextortion. And it's where people potentially from far away can, contact generally, kids, younger people who haven't learned good discretion and good decision making. And, they convince them to send them photos, and then they use those photos to extort them and get them to serve them in one capacity or another, and it becomes a serious concern. And that's going to be a difficult one from an enforcement perspective, because typically the offenders aren't necessarily local offenders. I think it's going to be very, very important, to get the word out so that people are educating their kids and the young adults about, this type of a threat, so that we can avoid victimization here locally as best we can. And I think that's something that, by getting the word out to your members, if they, spread that word amongst their local contacts and amongst the community, people who look to them as leaders, I think that's just good advice for people, and you can avoid some pretty serious problems by just having, good understanding of what the threat is as you see kids getting on the computers and that sort of thing.
Sheriff, we'll stick with you. I mean, to build off some of that, I mean, what what would you see as the biggest challenge facing the Rock County Sheriff's Department going forward as we enter into a new phase with a new sheriff being elected in November? What do you see as the biggest challenges facing the department?
Well, I think right now, certainly the new sheriff is going to have their hands full with this project management. It's certainly going to require close monitoring as that project comes together. Make sure that it continues in a path that we intended it to head on. So that will be a huge challenge. The other challenge that I see moving forward will be with regards to staffing. We're in a really good position for our law enforcement services side of the house, our deputies, our detectives, our command staff, that sort of thing. On the corrections side of the house, that's going to be a little bit more of a challenge. Those are generally more entry-level jobs, and it's getting to be more and more challenging to find people to take those. It's a difficult job. I'm not sure. I think with deputies who are out in the public, they definitely feel the appreciation of the community. I think it's a little harder for our correctional staff who have to work behind those jail walls. As you drive by, the place looks very professional, and you don't realize some of the challenges and the struggles that go on behind those walls. And I think it's important that those people who are doing a really important and difficult task for our community feel our recognition and our appreciation for what it is that they do. I think some of the other agencies around us have felt this struggle already, and they've adjusted their wages upwards, and it just makes it a little harder for us to compete both with public agencies nearby and with private industry out there, where wages are jumping relatively quickly, and in government things seem to move a little bit slower. And right now, when everybody's competing for the same workers, it's a bit going to be a challenge for the next person coming in.
Chief, how about you? What's the biggest challenge facing the JPD, in your opinion?
Well, I'll start with what keeps me up at night. We've hired an awful lot of police officers. Probably about half of our patrol force has less than 3 years on. I think our third shift, the whole shift, is less than 2 years. And it's very easy for a police officer to get in too deep, get themselves in trouble. Once an officer gets about 5 years on, they're doing pretty well and can be very safe with their duties. But I have concerns about these young officers and their safety. We offer the best training we can. But nonetheless, it's a dangerous world out there some nights when you're out there by yourself. So what we're doing is we're really collapsing down and pushing a lot of hands-on scenario-based training to take what would take a number of years and experience out in the field and make very real type training at the police department here, and really put those officers in a good position to be safe. So for the community, I would say gun crime. We're concerned with gun crime. You don't have to look very far. GIC Milwaukee had 7 homicides this weekend alone. Chicago had a handful. Rockford has their share. So we don't have to look too far. There's some pretty serious crime going on, and we just work daily on making sure it just doesn't come to our community.
Yeah, good deal. Well, I've got a ton of questions here. I could go on and on all day, and we'll just have to ask you guys back to answer more questions if you're not too busy. But I wanted to end with one question that's coming from our audience, actually. What can community members and private individuals do to help keep us all safe? I mean, who wants to start with that one? I mean, what can a private individual do to help community policing efforts? Sheriff, why don't we start with you on that one?
Sure. I appreciate the question. Certainly, in the last few years, I have been overwhelmed by some of the community support, and certainly there are times when we get involved in difficult cases, and things tend to stress the deputies or the detectives that are working cases, and feel that community support makes a world of difference. As I look forward, particularly when I think of this Pinehurst replacement project and what it is that we're hoping to accomplish there, I see technology is going to be something that's going to be very useful in the future. I mean, it's already proven to be very helpful in stemming some of the crime issues out there. You know, when you think of Ring doorbells, you think of the number of private businesses that have surveillance equipment and some of the technology that's now available to law enforcement. You know, I think bringing that all together and making it, being able to be monitored at a central location is going to be pretty useful for us. You know, I heard just recently of a case up in northeast Wisconsin, somewhere up there, where it was either a Walmart or Farm and Fleet that purchased an ALPR, automatic license plate reader, for use on their property, and then they were willing to share that information with law enforcement. You know, if I wanted to put cameras in critical places around the county, I would have to buy quite a few. If we were helped out by some of the private businesses out there, and these things aren't super high dollar items here. ALPR can be rented for somewhere around $1,200–1,500 a year, and for a business like Walmart, I don't think that that's going to set them back too terribly badly. But that piece of equipment could provide some pretty critical information for us. You know, if they have a shoplifter who does damage to a clerk on the way out, you know, you could say they left at this time and this was the type of vehicle. And if you had an ALPR, you could probably get that plate, and it would sure help the investigation. So I guess as I look forward to the future and how we could coordinate between private industry and law enforcement, that sort of a partnership could really help us to stem some of the crimes that companies have to deal with. And hopefully the next sheriff will be exploring that possibility and hopefully developing those ties to the community to work together to make it as safe as we possibly can.
Thank you, Sheriff. Chief, what do you think? What can community members do to help keep this community safe?
Sheriff, I think you looked at my notes. Yes, I agree. License plate readers, that's something that's coming out, and if individual businesses can purchase those and give us access, we can solve a lot of crime. Likewise, high definition surveillance cameras. You know, we're solving crimes every day with some of those footage that we're able to obtain and share with the officers. But aside from the technology side, I don't want people to lose sight of the importance of calling us with suspicious information, concerning information. If you look at our active shooters in the schools, some of this most serious crime that we see in our nation, these suspects often post or talk about what they're going to do. And if people would just call law enforcement, it gives us a really good chance to solve it before it becomes a crime. I've said this to anybody that will listen. You give us a call, put that burden on us to resolve it, and our guys they'll be out there in the middle of the night leaning on doors if that's what it takes to keep a school safe. So don't hesitate to call. We take those calls seriously. We always follow up on them. We know the outcomes can be very good and keep our community safe, keep our citizens safe. So please give us a call if you hear anything in the community.
Well, thank you to both of you. Sheriff Knutson, thank you for your years of honored and honorable service to the county. Chief Moore, same for you, absolutely. And thank you for what you are doing for the community in terms of becoming the interim city manager and helping lead our city through these times. And with that, I'd love to throw it over to Angela. I don't want to put you on the spot, but Angela, you got any final words there before we
No, I think
depart?
it's great. Sheriff Knutson, thank you so much for many of your years, and you know you're leading a legacy behind, and the new candidates coming up. I know are excited to lead under the great foundation that you provided the county. So thank you very much for that. And I think I already thanked Chief Moore, and but just very excited to have you guys both on the call today. And it's great to hear the project overview, and we can certainly understand and appreciate all the good work that both of you are doing for the community and keep us safe. So thank you.
Very much.
Yeah, I can't tell you how much I appreciate the time. I know both of you are very busy. Sheriff, I hear your alarm bell going off for your 1 o'clock meeting. So with that, we want to end a little early so everybody can get off to their 1 o'clock meetings. But again, we're going to share this video far and wide with all sorts of community partners. So look for that pretty soon. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining today, and we'll talk to you next month. Take care.